Hey everyone, this is Pete Perusik, and I want to welcome you to this edition of the Weathered Athlete Podcast, a place for us to honor those athletes that refuse to go quietly into the night. As a weathering triathlete and a physical therapist, I will spend my time talking with those athletes that continue to make the necessary repairs and continue to move forward. They may have a few cracks in their foundation or a squeaky step, and their patinas may continue to fade, but they are no less glorious than years prior. In fact, I feel they have more heart and resolve as they have weathered and can provide the pathway to set the standard that we should all live by. My goal is to determine what sets these individuals apart from the rest of society. After the discussion is over, I encourage you to stick around and hear a breakdown from a physical therapist perspective of how this weathering athlete is able to keep moving forward. Don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your friends. Today I'm honored to be joined by Dave Haase from mile number 12. Since we completed our interview last month, Dave added to his already impressive race resume. On September 18th to the 20th, he completed the Silver State 508. He completed the event in 32 hours, 49 minutes, and 48 seconds, which was 4 hours ahead of the first place female and 7 hours ahead of the second place male. Pretty impressive. He is a 5-time solo finisher at RAAM, which is a 3,000-mile cycling race across America. In 2015, he finished the race in under 9 days and finished in second place. We spend time talking about how he started into ultra events, how he manages to fit in training as the owner of a bike specialty store, his experiences over the years at RAAM, and how his connection with IBM and the use of technology allows him to be more efficiently manage his race environment and his medical condition as he races. I hope you enjoy. Hey, Dave.
Hey, hello.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you taking some time, at least, so we can talk a little bit about some of the stuff you've been doing. I don't know if you happen to take a look at, what I've done. I started this podcast, and my focus is on, I'm a physical therapist, and also just did my first Ironman last year when I turned 50. So I'm just starting to work my way into the ultra events. I have some friends in the ultra running community that keep pushing me. You know how it is. Yep.
And runners are challenging. Yes.
And I actually have a good friend of mine. She's done RAAM twice now.
Okay.
But she did it part of a 4-team.
All right. Awesome.
So pretty amazing doing it as a solo. I'm impressed. So I need to definitely talk to you about how you did that.
Sure.
So how long have you been doing ultra events?
I started in about 2002, 2003 doing ultra events. And it kind of happened with a friend just saying, hey, you should go do this 100-mile race. And I went and did it and did pretty well. And then I went and did a 24-hour race after that. So, and that was a RAAM qualifier. So when I qualified, obviously, then I was like, I better go do RAAM. And I did RAAM, and then I started having to do other races, right? You can't really, that's like jumping way in without a lot of experience, and I suffered. So I started doing other races and found I really liked them. So.
Okay, that's good. The first one you said was a running event, but everything else has pretty much been all bike.
I've done a few running events as well. I've done the Leadman, running and biking, and then I've done that twice. And I've done I did a run around here called the Frozen Otter. It's a 68-mile trail run in the winter, so I've done some ultra runs. I did a run in around the Grand Canyon that maybe 3 years ago. That was just signed up because I couldn't ride from an injury, and I went and ran that. So I've done a few runs, but that hurts the rest of my body too much, and I don't train to run, so that makes it really hard to do a run.
Okay, yeah, you own a bike shop?
I do own a bike shop, yes.
Okay, but it's also ski as well. What types of things do you do there?
Yeah, we do bike and ski. So cross country, downhill, snowboard, kind of ski equipment, and then in the summer we do bike, all styles of bike, mountain bike, road bike, some triathlon business, BMX, and then we also do some skateboard stuff. We do kind of all of those activities in the store. We carry all of the hard goods as well as the soft goods related to that.
Okay, where are you located?
In Fond du Lac, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. That's cool. So yeah, that's nice to be able to pretty much cover all year with stuff.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Okay. So what keeps you coming back to these ultra distance events? Because that seems to be what you're doing the most of.
So I've started doing a lot of gravel racing a couple of years ago, and I really love doing those. And I've had a lot of fun at them, and I'm okay at them. But like this year, I signed up to do a bunch of gravel races, and they were all canceled, and the ultra events haven't been canceled. So I just kind of refocused and signed up for some ultra events, and I have done those this year. But I think the ultra event is, two things. I do fairly well in it, so it's always nice to do well in a race.
Yeah.
And then I find I just like being out there on the road, riding my bike, and everything about it. And then it, leads to doing some training, and you've got to be very consistent with your training and your planning and your preparation always to do an ultra event. So that's kind of what I think leads me back to them.
Okay. Now, how do you
maybe to beat a previous time or something like that, right?
Yeah, of course. That's what keeps us coming back. You can always do better.
Right.
So how do you do that owning a store? What time do you have to train?
That's where it becomes challenging. So we're open 9 to 7, every day during the week. We're open Saturdays and Sundays, and I generally work most of the time, and I'm here most of the time. So my training usually is anywhere from, as a general statement, I get up and start riding about 4:30 or 5 o'clock and ride till 9. And then I'm at the store at 9 a.m.
Okay.
So I do it early in the morning. Sometimes if I've got a super long ride, then I just back up and start earlier. So I might, there's times I go out at midnight.
Okay.
And start riding so I can get my 12-hour ride in before I work type of thing. So I just kind of base it on what rides and things I have, but I'm always usually to the store by around 9 o'clock.
Okay. So you're doing pretty much everything on the road. Do you do trainer stuff?
I don't do a lot of trainer riding. Okay. I just don't. I no longer like riding on a trainer, and honestly, mentally, I don't enjoy it. There's nothing fun for me riding on a trainer, and going out in the morning, ride my bike when it's dark out and, the sun rises. That whole concept is just beautiful and awesome. And so I like all of that.
Okay.
So because although I do training and I'm riding all these ultra events or other events, I don't really like to train. I like to go ride my bike,
Yeah.
So it's one of those tricky balances, right?
Yeah. Well, so my next question is, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, so I know what winters are like. How do you bike in the winter?
So that's probably when I do back off on my riding a little bit, and I ride when it's 25 degrees maybe and above, and the roads are clear. I'll go out inside and ride. Otherwise, I'll just do a shorter ride on the trainer. Because I can't spend as much time on the trainer. If I have a long ride to do on the trainer, then I'll kind of find a group of people that are doing some indoor training on a trainer and maybe go ride with them but I tend to back my riding off in the winter a little bit just because I can't handle sitting on a trainer that long anymore. I used to do some long rides on the trainer, but it just doesn't work anymore.
No, it's not fun. It's definitely a challenge. You can only watch so many movies or so many sporting events. It's difficult. After you get to push 2 hours, it's like, get me off of this thing.
Yeah. So in the winter, I try to do shorter rides, but a little more intensity.
Yeah.
In the winter. So I'm doing an hour, harder or an hour and a half harder efforts than I would normally in the summertime or spring.
Okay. Okay. That's cool. So how many times have you done RAAM?
7
Okay.
times. I've finished 5 RAAMs and have 7 attempts.
Okay. Yeah. And you finished twice or second twice, right?
Second twice, third, and 2/4.
Okay. That's good.
Always the top American finisher.
Awesome. That is great. I happened to come across your Found in America, that documentary they did on you. I probably saw it beginning of the summer, which was very cool. So yeah, that kind of documented everything last year.
Yep. And in that race, I did end up not finishing the race. So, but that's the way some races go, right?
Yeah, it is. So basically, did you find yourself on that ride?
Pardon? No, I didn't. I found it's impossible to find yourself, right? You're looking and looking. You just don't really find yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to create yourself. I don't know. Finding yourself, it wasn't working.
Yeah. So it was your shoulder, right?
Yeah. My shoulder gave out. I had 2 crashes the previous 2 years that really punished my body and beat my body up. And I just couldn't hold my right arm up, which was then making me sit crooked on the bike, which created saddle sores and other issues. And mentally, I was just not into the race either. I struggled probably from the start of the race. I just felt like I was struggling the whole time. I made it 2,000 miles, was in second place when I dropped out, but definitely I wouldn't have been able to. I maybe could have finished, but I didn't feel safe on the road the way I was riding.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't want to have another crash, and then you're out for even a longer period of time. It's not worth it. You made the right call.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's difficult. I'm sure it is, but again, a broken leg is not where you want to be.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So my question is funny. I was, as they're sitting there waiting for this to come on, a friend of mine posted something on Facebook. So I need to ask you. It says researchers look at why perception of time is altered during exercise. So my question is, your 9 days, 23 hours and 28 minutes. Does it seem any shorter? That's still a long time.
That's a long time. It is. And the last 23 hours of that are a really long time. So no, that's a long time when you're doing an effort like RAAM, because you're always moving. You don't sleep hardly at all.
Okay.
And you're still pushing as hard as you can push, and not only you but your whole crew that's along. So that's fast, but that's also a long time.
Yeah. So how much sleep are you actually getting? Do you sleep every night?
In the RAAMs that I've done, I've always wanted to ride, for like 36 hours and then sleep for 2 hours. So as a general statement, I haven't quite made that yet,
Okay.
So I end up falling asleep a little bit sooner than that. But I tend to be off my bike for 2 hours every 24-hour period. But I try to get I've been able to ride like 32 hours before my first sleep. So as a general statement, once I take that first sleep, then we will ride about 24 hours a day and then be off my bike for 2 hours.
Okay.
Total. So that's like getting off the bike, taking your clothes off, taking care of any saddle sores, eating, and then sleeping. So my sleep time of that 2 hours is about 1 hour and 37 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because you're not sleeping at every stop. You're just refueling and working your way, and because you stop at the time stations or just go through the time stations.
No. Seldom stop at the time stations.
Oh, okay.
Yep, we just keep rolling. Never really stop at those.
Okay. And then you're having somebody has to follow you pretty much the whole race, right?
Yeah, I have a crew with me, a team of and it's varied. I've had as little as 7 people. That's not enough. Yeah. And I've had as many as 13 people, and that's too many.
Okay.
So we have used for the last 3 races I've done, I've had we have used an RV a few times, and I'm not a fan of the RV, but that's mostly for the crew. But we have used 3 vehicles, and that tends to work pretty well because we have had a vehicle break down, and then you can use another vehicle. So 2 vehicles are pretty close to me during the race, and then 1 is up the road with crew members, hopefully at a motel sleeping in the ideal scenario.
Yeah, because they're sleeping and rotating, so
they are. Yeah, I run 3 crew members in my follow vehicle.
Yeah,
so a driver, a navigator, and then a feeder, who generally in my crew has been a nurse or has that form of training.
Okay.
because they're just good at documenting things, and they are taking my vitals and doing some stuff. And if I need an IV, they give me an IV, which doesn't happen too often, but
Yeah.
they're just very organized with nutrition.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things I thought was really cool was that basically the Internet of Dave with all the stuff they are monitoring. How many years have you had that?
We started that in 2015. I've used it for 3 races. It came about. My friend works at IBM at the time, and I said, "Hey, IBM has a lot of money. Maybe you can sponsor me." And he said, "I don't think we can do that." And he developed this idea of Internet of Dave, and that's when all of the Internet of Things were coming into play. Right, you're putting all of these devices on different things to monitor. So, like your washing machine can connect and tell you when it's going to be fixed or when it needs service. And so we created this basically living, breathing Internet of Dave, where I have devices on me to help improve my performance. So it measured my heart rate, my breathing rate, core body temperature. I would swallow a pill that would then take my core temperature, so we could monitor core temperature. We had weather data. All of that information was collected, gathered, sent to the cloud, and then came back down to a dashboard in my crew vehicle, and they could monitor wind and weather conditions. And then that was put together with high-speed analytics, so that the real reason was we could determine based on wind and weather and my performance when the best time to sleep would be based on all of those conditions.
Okay.
So if we were going to sleep for that time, we could plug in, let's say, 6 hours down the road or 24 hours down the road, and when the weather conditions would make it optimal to sleep based on the wind, so that we had the best wind and weather conditions that we would be facing on the course to give us an advantage.
That's amazing. The technology, and then just going out there and just doing it and winging it as you're going. Does anybody else do that?
No, they don't. Some have tried little things, but we probably have used the most devices and the most things. For me, core body temperature became the key because I do struggle in the heat. It allowed my crew to know exactly what my core temperature was, and then they would apply ice to me and do different things to keep my body cool, and monitor that part of it. And we could see my power drop as soon as my core temperature went above 102. So keeping my body cool. But then it also helped us with weather, and using the weather data from the weather company. We would know where along the course we may be expecting rain and when's the best time to sleep. So like in Kansas one time, we were right in the middle of a lightning storm, and it was happening right there, but it wasn't raining. And we decided based on the wind and weather, we would be sleeping at the next time station. And as soon as I got off my bike, it started downpouring, huge windstorms.
Yeah.
And I was sleeping while this storm happened. I woke up and there was no storm anymore. So those, and I only slept an hour and a half. So it saved us. It made us sleep at the right time. And then I didn't have to ride in that bad weather conditions.
That's awesome. So how often do you have to swallow that pill? Because obviously it's not staying in your stomach the whole time.
No, it passes at certain times. So I most of the time I probably use that pill like 5 times within the full race.
Okay.
So it would stay in for a little bit. Obviously, doing a race like that, you're not going number 2 as often as you. So when I would do that, it would be basically at that time. That's when we would have to put a new pill in.
Okay. Yeah, and it's not hot the whole way across the country, is it?
No, we really focused our monitoring in the Sonoran Desert. So California through Arizona, and then, a little bit into Utah when we're in Monument Valley, and then through Kansas. Definitely it can get warm and humid. So it's a little different type of hot, but it still can be an issue. So we monitored it through that area as well. Those were our biggest points of monitoring, but mostly getting through the desert and into Colorado was our biggest key.
That's awesome. I thought that was such the coolest thing, Now, any disadvantages? Because, we all can be slave to the data, and you look at it and constantly looking at Garmin, constantly looking at Strava and everything else. Were there any downsides you saw to having all that?
Yeah, the biggest downside is all of those need to be charged. And so we have multiple devices. Some of the battery lives, were 8 hours. So then they'd have to change a device. And we had a system where we would change all of the devices to keep it simple because they're all connected through Bluetooth. And so it made it a little easier. But so we did have to change those devices. And that was a little challenging. And then the other part of it was working through an Android app on our phone. So we had to have cell phone connectivity, and going across the country in remote areas, that was a challenge as well. So there were times we didn't have cell phone connection. So some of the information wasn't as accurate as it could have been.
Okay.
But mostly the time it took to keep the devices operating. And it really took one crew member served almost his full-time duty was charging devices and computers and lights and all of that. So it's a little bit of a detriment as well as, an improvement to our performance.
Okay. Now, are you required to have medical personnel with every team?
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
I suffered the first RAM I did. I really sick. Basically ended up checking into a hospital in West Virginia. My kidneys were about to shut down. And we didn't know anything about nutrition, hydration, or anything. It was like my first time experience. Did not go really well. And so the next year I just got a nursing student to come along, and we saw vast improvements, and then we just built upon it. And I was able to then get some IVs when we needed.
Okay.
But really they were able to monitor my heart rate and my weight and my blood pressure and check all of that when we would stop. So it became very important. And I think it's definitely vital to have someone with skills like that on the team so that you can, it's not so much if you're trying to finish in 12 days.
Yeah.
It's when you try to push to get under 9 days, that's when everything happens negatively.
Yeah. Well, it's wise because, again, so many things can go wrong. So it's better to have somebody that's their main focus is to, one, keep you healthy and make sure that you are safe, because you don't always make the right decisions, especially when you're the one doing it and you're gonna push. Because really the average person out there is hearing that and saying, well, why would you go back the next year if you ended up in the hospital and you end up with all this stuff going on? So what do you have to say to that?
Well, it's still the challenge, right?
Yep.
It wasn't the performance you wanted, so you're going back to do it, and you're getting smarter. I learned a lot about nutrition, my own body. So I've monitored that and have made improvements every time. We keep trying to make little improvements that give you just that little extra advantage in the race. So, I've kind of got my nutrition and food dialed in, where the first time I went and did it, I basically did what I saw someone do, and I ate Snickers bars and, sugar and, Red Bulls and Monsters and to keep me awake. And that didn't go so well. So we've improved our performance. And so improvement is one of the main things that, every time that seems to bring me back is how can we improve upon what we didn't do as well so that we can go faster.
Yeah, that's great. So I've seen a couple times saying that whatever the last RAM was going to be your last, and you're not doing it. Are you planning on doing it again, do you think?
I'm working towards a 2021 version of RAM. So okay. It's part of it is just life in general, right? What you got going on in your own life. It's a huge commitment, not only for you, but you got a crew of 10 people that are making a commitment to you and in their own lives. So that's always a little bit challenging. And being a small business owner, I'm going to take 3 weeks away from work, plus all of the other things that go with that. So, when you say you're not going to do it, it's like, I've got to take care of all this other stuff. But then there's reasons to push towards going back.
Yeah.
The amount of people who follow when you're doing the race, that tends to get you fired up to go do it again. When you're standing in a grocery store and someone's telling you, I watched you go across the country and I followed your little dot all the way across, makes you go, well, all right, maybe, you inspired me to do something. So then that sometimes gets you motivated to go back and do it as well.
That's awesome. So I obviously, you're basically going in a tunnel for 3 weeks. So as far as like the business and everything else, because obviously they're not calling you to say, "Hey, Dave, what do you think about this?" So obviously you have to trust the fact that they're just going to basically handle everything and it's going to be there when you get back. Correct?
Yeah, they do a great job. They do a good job.
Well, that's awesome because that's the last thing you want to worry about is anything going on. Your focus to get across the country and be first.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And even in that smallest part, really my focus is riding my bike, right? And
Yeah.
I'm relying on my crew to basically tell me everything to do. And basically all I have to do is pedal my bike and look forward and keep moving.
Yeah, so that's what leads me to that next statement I loved in Found in America that said basically once you're done with the race, you have to start doing things yourself.
Yeah, for sure. That's the hardest part, because while you're racing, basically, a car pulls up next to you, hands you a water bottle. My only job is to drink it, right?
Yeah.
They hand me food. They'll even sometimes ask, like, what do you want to eat? And I don't know what's in the follow vehicle.
Yeah.
We have a small list of choices, but I don't even, it's like, just come up and hand me something and I'll eat it, to get my calories in. So I don't really do any thinking or anything. I'm just riding my bike and I rely on them. And then, once that's over, then it's the whole thing is over, right? The crew feels that way even,
Yeah.
So it's, then you're doing everything back on your own.
You have to make decisions yourself now.
Yeah, right.
So typical before COVID. So you said basically you would ride to work, and obviously you're riding home as well. Now has that really changed much because of COVID and how things with the store? Has that COVID really impacted your store a lot?
It has, for us positively.
Okay.
The bike business is like booming right now, right? So we've been the busiest we've ever been. I've worked just more hours than ever. So like the first 2 months of COVID, it was, 16-hour days working, sometimes the door wasn't even open, but we were repairing bikes when it first started.
Okay.
Now we're open in a different way, but we're selling tons of bikes. So what really has changed is, races haven't happened.
Yeah.
Group rides haven't happened. I'm out riding by myself, which I've always done a lot anyway.
Yeah.
So more of it is just to keep focused on training as opposed to just, going out to ride your bike.
Yeah.
And so when I'm doing my rides, staying focused on the workout plan that I have. And so I was the first 2 months of maybe the first month of COVID, I wasn't working with my coach that I have used because I knew things weren't going to be the same. And then I started because I realized I'm just out there, pedaling and not doing any specific activities, so that I've become a little more focused because of that on my training, even though, the races that I'm doing are a little bit, unsure of.
Yeah. Yeah. So you working with a coach pretty much year round. Is that typical for you?
It is when I know I'm going to do RAM.
Yeah.
Or if I know there's a few, like I had a big lineup of some of the best gravel races planned this year, all the well-known gravel races that were out there. And so I was using him to perform well in those gravel races. But there are times I will not work with a coach, but I have used the same coach all the time.
Okay.
Since I started using a coach.
Okay.
So for, so maybe 2014, I started using my coach and on and off.
Okay. So do you do a lot of strength training or cross training?
I didn't in the past, but I've realized as I've gotten older how much more important being stronger is.
Yeah.
And that's made a big difference, right? Cyclists are always worried about their weight. So, but in the winter, I kind of watch what I eat a little bit because you gain weight as you get older, a little bit easier. But I work harder on strength, knowing that I'm not going to do as much strength training once I'm cycling. And then the past year, I really did a lot of yoga and worked on flexibility because I found that I was still having issues with, even though I was really strong, I wasn't able to use those functional muscles that I've created.
Yeah.
Because they were just maybe tight or my glute muscles were super tight or my hip flexors just were tight. So doing yoga really made my whole complete body strong, especially my core.
Yeah.
And that just made me way stronger on the bike.
Okay. Yeah, that's good because the problem is on the bike, one, the posture for that length of time, two, and then, so flexibility and then core strength is also a huge component.
Yeah, it allows me to, hold my position on the bike longer and then be stronger when I'm riding. And I used to always have issues with my hips and psoas muscles. And then so I started doing a lot of lateral sidewalks with bands on my ankles and knees to strengthen my whole glute core area. And that's made a huge difference in my riding for gravel racing as well as, endurance racing. I just am stronger on the bike. I can carry a pack in a Voyager type of event if I'm doing it, and feel much stronger overall.
Okay, that's good. So you said you had, a couple crashes, and then I know we talked about the shoulder briefly. Any other kind of injuries you've had to overcome?
No, those two, specifically the crash in 2017, I broke my collarbone, scapula, a couple ribs, punctured a lung. That took a long time to get back from it, and I found it really hard to get back from mentally because I wasn't able to go ride my bike. So I was doing some walking and, I found myself all of a sudden out walking 12 to 15 miles because I could walk, but it was like, and I don't even really like to walk, but that was the only way I could relieve the mental parts of it. And I had a lot going on personally in my life at the time. So just trying to stay focused. I was doing some of that and listening to podcasts and stuff, but that was a major injury that really made me focus on strength training because I would go to the gym and use this little band while guys were, squatting 600 pounds and I'm playing with a tiny little rubber band, grunting and groaning like I was, so it made me realize that strength is super important, but also flexibility then as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, ask those people throwing around 600 pounds if they can ride their bike across the United States.
I knew they couldn't, so I was good that way, right?
Yeah, I think you're fine with the little bands. I think you're okay.
Yeah.
So that crash, was it during a race or during training?
It was a gravel race in Idaho, and descending to the finish line, I was actually in a really good place, and I was trying to move up a couple spots and finish in the top 10. I was having the best race of my life, and all of my power numbers indicated I was really performing well. And I was descending and hit a rock and blew my front wheel up and just plowed myself right into the ground. It's the hardest I've ever crashed, and it was the most painful experience I've had. And then I had to sit in the front seat of my van and drive home. I was going to fly home, but I had a punctured lung, so I couldn't. So I just sat in the front seat of my van until we got home, and then went and saw my doctor here and surgeon once we got back. But that was really painful. And took a long time. That scapula, my collarbone hurt, but the scapula injury I kind of shattered my scapula. So all of those shoulder muscles and lifting my arm above my head took forever to come back, and took like a full year to recover. And then I crashed again in another race right after that, and kind of the same concept. So.
Yeah, I haven't done any gravel races, but that seems to be where cyclists, everybody that I've talked to that have done them, there are definitely some injuries from them.
Yeah, you're crashing. When you do crash, it's if someone says, "Oh, I broke my collarbone," it's pretty normal thing when you're doing races like that, because you're going over the bars and falling hard. So
yeah, but you still go back for more though, right?
I do. Yes. Yeah.
This is what the adrenaline of what is it about it that draws you back into it?
In the scene like gravel racing or crit racing, it's riding in that group and powering through and going hard and fast in that all out effort.
Yeah.
In endurance racing, it's I think the focus of maintaining that pace that you're in, because there's a lot of times you're not racing with anyone other than yourself. You're out there an hour ahead of someone, or I just did a race and I ended up winning the whole race by 5 hours. And I was on my bike for 35 hours.
Okay.
But it was focus of keeping my pace and the pace I wanted to finish in, and trying to stay at that pace the whole time that kind of kept me moving forward. So the mental part of endurance racing is really kind of what draws me to it as well.
Yeah. So what are you thinking of I know during the faster races, you don't have much to think, you're just reacting. But for the long distance, what are you thinking of this whole time? Especially, 1 mile at a time. You can't be thinking that. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, as a general statement, I always say I try not to think about anything
Yeah.
because then I'm focused on, moving forward. When you start thinking, then you're like, well, why am I doing this? Why
Yeah.
am I out here? I'm cold, I'm freezing, I've been riding for 24 hours. So I try not to focus really on anything. I just try to breathe and absorb what's going on and know what time I want to finish in and where my pace is at and am I on pace. But I don't try to think too broad concept because then your mind wanders and I lose track. So I do a lot of breathing on the bike and just focusing on moving forward. And that's came about probably as I started to in like 2015, and RAAM was my best ever finish. And I did a lot of that meditation type of stuff while on the bike. And I learned it during that race that really helped a lot. So.
Yeah, so the short goals actually probably, next time station, next town, whatever it is probably what gets you through. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, you don't want to look at the big picture because that's too too big a picture, right? It's just very narrow focused.
Okay. And you can think, okay, you're going to go across the country. It'd be great to look at the scenery. How much of the scenery are you actually looking at are you taking in any of it?
Surprisingly, yeah, I do. I take a lot of it in. The one thing I'm really good at riding at night, and I think the reason is it's slightly cooler, but you don't see all of the scenery, so your focus is very concentrated. But during the day, I'm definitely looking at scenery and checking things out and seeing how beautiful, our country is. Or I did a race in the race across the Alps in 2007, and that race was in Italy, Austria, and Switzerland. And there the scenery was phenomenal, but you could also smell the food when you were rolling through the small villages in Italy. So you were taking all of that in. And so the very little things, and that's probably been my favorite race just because of that. Yeah. But I do enjoy the scenery. Sometimes it's a bummer because it's like, it'd be cool to stop at that coffee shop in this really cool town in Jerome, Arizona, but I can't. My crew can stop there, and I see their car parked there, but I'm riding my bike, So I've gone back to some of those areas, but that away from racing. But it's just I do enjoy the scenery while I'm out there.
That's good. So how about you have issues with hallucinations during the rides?
For sure. In last year in the race, I always felt like there was someone right next to me running the whole time. So I'd look out of the side of my eye and I felt like someone was right there that I was racing. And I thought it was my uncle who passed away. I thought it was him. It was really weird, like a ghost.
Yeah. And
then along the side of the road, there were reflective markers on the guardrails. And I kept thinking those were people and I was passing them. So that happens once in a while, when you're up for 20 some hours, you start to get that. I try not to get to that state, but when you're pushing and you're not doing well and you're struggling with your pace, it becomes more challenging.
So as far as, we talked about you have all the data and says, okay, you need to stop at this date. Have you had your crew have to tell you, hey, Dave, we need to take a break here, even though because they're seeing you obviously very tired, you're weaving, becomes a safety risk. And it's interesting to see all the videos I've seen. There never seems to be any cars other than your pace car following you. But I guarantee there's other traffic on the road, correct?
Oh, yeah, for sure there is. So it gets to a little bit of where you are on the course and what the traffic is like. Because, if that happens during the day when there's super busy traffic, one time I did have my crew say, if you can't ride a straight line, we're going to pull you off the bike. And we stopped and got some gas and food and I had a bunch of caffeine energy bars in the car. Uh-huh. And, they wouldn't give them to me because, it was probably time to sleep, but I just reached in and grabbed 3 of them and suddenly I woke up. But we do monitor that because that can affect your hydration.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to get at that point where we were getting near the finish line. I didn't want to get pulled off the bike. So I quick slammed some of those down. But for the most part, I know when I'm too tired to ride.
Yeah.
And I make those judgments when it becomes unsafe and when I don't feel like I can hold a straight line or I'm starting to weave all over. In one time in West Virginia, we were really pushing to get to a time station where the crew had set up for me to sleep. And I struggled really hard on that road, and I had the other crew vehicle move in. So they worked as a team to keep me moving down the road, but safely moving down the road. So like they would get out and cheer me on every, it seemed like, every quarter mile, but they were just out there to get me to the next time station. So it became, instead of, we're going 40 miles, it was like, we're going 1 mile at a time to get to 40 miles. And they were there to support me through that by just cheering me on and doing whatever they could to get me to that time station. And at that point, it was like, 2 a.m. in the middle of nowhere, trying to do that out in West Virginia. So
that's awesome. Yeah, that's so cool having the group with you to do that stuff. There's no restrictions.
Yeah, there is no restriction. Okay. That's kind of where the crew realized, hey, we're struggling to get here. He's struggling, but we really need to get to this time station. So they stepped up and got me there. And so exactly, they can do that as long as we're following all the rules of the race.
Okay, that's good. So what do you think are a few of the secrets to your success?
I'm pretty motivated, and I always have a pretty positive attitude. So that's one key is, the mental, a pretty positive person. So when my crew hands me a water bottle, I thank them, each time. And so I'm always trying to, I'm trying to lift up my crew as they're trying to lift up me. So it's a good team of trying to do that and stay positive all the way across. So I think that's one of the reasons. And I'm consistent with my training as well. I ride all the time, every day, and so when someone says, I'm tapering or whatever, I don't really quite understand what that is. I don't really taper, but I don't necessarily, I do ramp up a little bit, but I don't, I just ride my bike. So it's very consistent with what I do on a daily basis when I'm doing an event.
So how long does it take you to recover from doing a RAAM?
As a general statement, I'm out riding my bike, a week after RAAM, but to fully recover to where I'm feeling really good, it's probably a month. And then if I really want to do a race and go really fast, it can be a little bit longer. I found I've done a couple races, a month after, and I'm good. And then about 100 miles into a race, it's like all of a sudden my body just says, we're done. And then I, fall off. But I would say it takes about a good month to feel like I have my speed and power back after RAAM. The first two were harder than it's been since then.
Okay. Now, do you have any special mantras or quotes?
My dad has rammed this into my head since I was a little kid is, if it is to be, it's up to me. And I always say that, and he'll say that to me. He was a Marine, and he went through Dale Carnegie training and, Zig Ziglar and all of these. So I hear all those quotes. And then one of my buddies who always sponsors me is a runner, and we've done a couple races together. His specialty was running, but he'll still get out because he likes to compete. And he'll always say one time, and he'll be like, one time, come on, give me one time. So it'll be the middle of a race, and my effort's struggling, and I'll say one time, and I'm talking to myself, and I joke about it because it's not one time, it's like 101 times that I need to finish. But it's like, for that second or moment, it's like, all right, focus. It's a way for me to kind of refocus. If my mind wanders or whatever, it lets me refocus on the race. So I'll say that once in a while. So
that's awesome. So in closing, basically, I use the hashtag #mymiles4 as a kind of way to reinforce why I do the things that I do. If you were to finish that sentence, a couple words, what would you say of why you do what you're doing?
I think it's my miles are for life.
Yeah.
It's how I live. It's what I do. Riding isn't really like training. It's how I start my day, right? It's what motivates me to go to work every day, to do everything in life. And so I would say it's for life, and it's a pretty standard routine for me to go out and ride. I ride to a coffee shop, I get my coffee, and pretty standard, same deal. I get about the same thing I eat there, and then I'll finish my ride home. And I need that as part of my everyday routine to make my life better each day. So it's important. So I would say my miles are for life.
Yeah, that's great. So I do have another question. So about RAM, I know my friend that's done it, like I said, they've done it twice as part of a team of 4. And I know it's fairly expensive because, one, you have all your crew, you have everything else. So do you have sponsors that for your event?
I do. I'm one of them. So it does cost me money every year. It's like my summer vacation. Is I go do RAM and I spend money to do it. What I do, I get some corporate sponsors to help a little bit. And then I started something in 2005 for my race. Just randomly, we started a time station sponsor. So there's 55 time stations across the country. And I asked, when the first year I did it, people said, well, I wish we would have known how we could help you. Yeah. So we created this time station. I get $100 per time station. So that's $5,500 I get for that. However, it turned into something that was filling up really fast. So we created 2 time stations for each time station. And then we've created different spots along the course. So what we would call scenic areas or special monuments of occasion that we have. And then we charge a little more for those spots. And people are more than willing to help out. So I get, when I'm doing the race, I have a community of 200 people that have committed money or their time or their effort to raise funds for me to go race. So they're all part of that team. And I found that's a way that lets me, raise enough money to do the race every year. And I work on a pretty small budget compared to a lot of other racers as well. And when we did Internet of Things, I was working with IBM and I would go do some presentations for various clients of IBM's, and I was making some money doing that, which all went to the racing too. So I've been able to do that and cover the cost of the race. For me, it's about $20,000 each time I do the race. I set a budget every year and it's a little less than that, and it's usually over that. So it's cost me more as well. Yeah. But I've been able to raise that money. I think being in business by yourself for 25 years, people have come into your shop. They know you. I'm part of the community. I do stuff for the community. It's made me give back a lot more to my community as well because they've supported me when I've asked for it. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I know. That's why I think I think it was close to 30 for the team of 4 that they had said, and then they went and raised money each year. They found a charity. One was for hospice and then another one. So they were able to raise some funds as well in the process. So I just think it's a great event. And I think I saw somewhere that people raised close to $2.6 million for charity. I think probably on average for the RAAM. So I think that's incredible. Yeah, it's both the teams are a lot of the times the ones doing that fundraising. The solo racers are there really to race hard and they've got so many of their own expenses, but the teams are doing an unbelievable job. And actually in 2005 was my second year doing the race. Yeah, there was a guy from Canada, Kevin Wallace, and he was raising money for cancer, and he raised about $100,000 for cancer. And his goal was $200,000, and he also owned a bike shop. And he finished the race, and he felt bad because he didn't raise that much money. And he had a customer come in and say to him, "Hey, you did a great job in that race, and I know you were trying to raise money." And he handed him a check to make up that difference. So basically, gave him almost $100,000 to reach his goal. So to me, that's pretty amazing too, to go out and race really well and raise that much money. So yeah, people do some great things. That's awesome. Well, Dave, that's all I have. I thank you so much for spending the time with me. Oh, thanks for the opportunity. My pleasure to be with you, and it's nice to meet you. And I'm going to go check out a few more of your podcasts now. So
I hope you enjoyed today's episode and were able to gain some insight into how one weathering athlete approaches each day of training and racing to stay as injury-free as possible. I believe his biggest strengths are his consistency, motivation, and his love of cycling. He demonstrates how, despite working 50 to 80 hours a week as a business owner, he is able to fit exercise and cycling into his daily routine. He states he does not understand the word taper because he will typically bike to and from work. Depending on his day's mileage, will adjust his start time to get in the required distance. He has learned to incorporate yoga and strengthening into his routine to reduce the risk of injuries, and his use of a coach for RAAM allows him to stay on track with training intensities. His use of technology in the form of the Internet of Dave is incredible. That technology enables him and his team the ability to manage the weather conditions and his medical condition throughout the race and to make adjustments to increase his ability to succeed. Sure beats winging it. He demonstrates that if you are willing to put in the time and focus on just riding your bike and allow those around you to help you, you can accomplish some pretty amazing things. Thank you for taking time in your busy schedule. If you find today's or any other episode inspiring, I ask you to consider to join our Patreon program. Details can be found at www.weatheredathlete.com. Also, please don't forget to hit subscribe to this podcast, share with your friends, give me a rating on iTunes, leave me a comment or drop me a line if you feel you have what it takes to enter the Weathered Athlete podcast. Lastly, no matter how you complete your miles, I encourage you to use the following hashtag, #MyMilesAre4, as a way to reinforce the purpose of those miles. As always, my miles are for the journey. Pete Perusic.